Good morning and welcome to Greenfinch Church Online. We're a little bit different today because we are doing our Sunday Fun Day service in the building. So part of that is geared more towards kids, which doesn't really lend itself to doing a live stream. So today what we've got online is the talk, pretty much the same talk that the adults will be hearing in the building. It's a talk all about shepherds. There's a lot of Bible study in this particular short talk, but stick with it. I think you'll enjoy it. I think you'll learn a lot, and I think we'll all kind of come out better at the end of it. So sit back and enjoy. We see a lot of shepherds in the Old Testament cropping up all over the place before Jesus walked the earth. And come the New Testament, I'm not sure we see many shepherds at all, except, of course, Jesus is referred to as shepherd, though I don't know that he ever tended sheep at all. And of course, we do have the shepherds that appeared around the time that Jesus was born, went to visit him in the manger. But after that, pretty much zero. So what is it about so many shepherds early in Jewish history? Why are they included in the sacred text? And what do we have to learn from them? This morning I want to take a look at just a few of those Old Testament shepherds and see how they point us towards our own spiritual shepherd, Jesus. So let's dive straight in with the first recorded shepherd in the Bible. Maybe you'll know that is Abel. We're going to label him as Abel the shepherd slain. In Genesis chapter 4, Eve gave birth to Cain, and it says later she gave birth to his brother Abel. Now Abel kept flocks and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. And Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favour on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favour. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." Now Cain said to his brother Abel, "Let's go out to the field." While they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" "Well, I don't know," he replied. "Am I my brother's keeper?" The Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground." Abel, according to Genesis, was the second person ever born, and he grew up to be a shepherd whilst his brother Cain worked the ground. Oh, that sounds a lot like an arable farmer to me. Abel points us to Jesus in that he sanctified his work to the glory of God, and he offered a blood sacrifice on the altar of the Lord. This early pointing to Jesus is quite shadowy, certainly not full and comprehensive. I mean, I put the projector on Monday and it took a few seconds to warm up. You could see the image early on, but not that clearly. Abel's like that in reflecting Jesus. He is a shadow of Jesus, but in many ways quite a shadowy shadow. He brings forward a sacrifice of blood to the Father, as Jesus also will through his own death. Genesis records God saying, we just read it to Cain, "Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground." Never ever in the history of the world has the blood of anyone more plainly cried out to God than that of Jesus. His blood spilled for the benefit of mankind. His blood crying out, "Forgive them, Lord." Also, I guess as we look at Abel, we see him hated by his brother. The spiritual hated by the carnal, in much the same way that Jesus' death came about. The spiritual hated by the carnal. Those who would do anything they could to keep their place in society. Even the religious leaders doing all they could to rid the world of the one bringing incredible spiritual truth. You see, at the very beginning of the story of mankind, with the second person ever born, we're already getting a glimpse of the Saviour that is to come. That's the shepherd Abel. Let's go on to another Old Testament shepherd. Shepherd number 2 is going to be Jacob. We might call Jacob the toiling shepherd. Jacob works hard with the sheep. He works really hard, not only to gain himself a flock. He has this deal whereby if any sheep are born spotted then or not quite right, he gets to keep them. But he also works hard in order to get himself a spouse. Jacob, twin to Esau, grows up and leaves his child at home, the place where he was loved, the place where he was heir. He was heir partly through his own purchase. You know, he bought his brother's inheritance for a portion of bean stew. But he was also heir through God's promise. You see, before Jacob was born, God ordained that his plan for his chosen people would be through Jacob, rather than through Jacob's twin brother Esau, even though Esau was the elder. So Jacob, loved at home and heir, leaves home and makes for his uncle's place, where he works hard in order to get the hand of Rachel, the one he's fallen for at first sight. In essence, the early part of the story of Jacob is a love story, a dramatic tale with twists and turns along the way. You should read it, it's a great story. Jacob works for Uncle Laban for 7 years for the hand of Rachel, only to be tricked into marrying her elder sister Leah. Jacob then has to toil for another 7 years before being able to marry Rachel. Maybe we can kind of align this with Jesus coming to earth, toiling to rescue his people, toiling to love the one he loved, his Rachel. Rachel is akin to the Jewish church, but we know that the Jewish church largely rejected Jesus while he was here on earth. Jacob worked hard for 7 years and didn't receive what he'd worked for. But it wasn't that he got nothing in return. He got Leah. Jesus likewise didn't receive his first love, the Jewish church, but he still received reward for his toil, the Gentile church, his Leah. The prophet Isaiah records, "It is too small, God says, a thing for you to be my servant, to restore the tribes of Jacob and bring back those of Israel I have kept." God says what you've done it's too big to simply be kept to the Jews. He says, "I will also make you a light for the Gentiles, that my salvation may reach to the ends of the earth." I came across this quote: "Leah, the Gentile church, is far more fruitful for Christ in spiritual children than the Rachel for whom he served in the days of his flesh." That works through in this analogy in that we see that Leah had 7 children by Jacob, 6 sons and 1 daughter, and Rachel, Jacob's most beloved, just had the 2 sons, Joseph, he with the technical dream coat, and Benjamin. Jacob worked hard. He gave his all to gain his bride. Just as Jesus' ministry was supremely hard on this earth, as he gave his all for his bride being the church, known as the bride of Christ. Check out Ephesians 5:22-23, showing Christ his head akin to the husband, making the church the bride. Jacob, as a good shepherd, would have toiled to keep his sheep safe, and on his arrest, analogy again, Jesus, as recorded by John, was able to fulfill his own words recorded in John 6:39. And this is the will of him who sent me, that I shall lose none of all those he's given me, but raise them up at the last day. This is the great promise to those who stay close to the Lord. Stay close, he won't let you go. Can you see how the Old Testament shepherds are revealing Jesus to us? Okay, our final shepherd for this morning is going to be David. David's going to represent Christ in quite a different way. David, the shepherd king, points us to Christ in the midst of his church. You maybe know more about the shepherd David than the other shepherds. I mean, he famously is the shepherd boy who lobs a stone at the giant Goliath and kills the mighty man, the champion of the Philistines. David, just like Jesus, begins his adult life under great trials. He's anointed, we talked about that last week, and immediately he begins to suffer. King Saul, in a nutshell, is out to get him. He hunts him down and he doesn't want to rest until David is dead and buried. Likewise, Jesus was wanted from birth, a wanted child. Soon after Jesus' birth in Bethlehem, Herod becomes aware that something's afoot and goes all out to try to make sure that Jesus doesn't survive infanthood. Matthew 2 recalls, when Herod realized that he'd been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he'd learned from the Magi. That's not a part of the nativity story we talk about a lot, but essentially Jesus is being hunted by a ruthless king, as the shepherd David was by King Saul. When we pick up again Jesus' story as he enters his ministry, we see that everywhere he turns there's someone out to trick him, to pull him down, and ultimately to have him removed. But David is raised up to be king, to be the greatest king the Jews ever knew until Jesus. Jesus is the king they largely miss. Isaiah prophesied, "For unto us a child is born. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever." 3 times in the New Testament, Jesus is referred to as King of Kings. Revelation makes it clear that Jesus was, is, and will be King of Kings. Jesus, the shepherd king, represented by David, the shepherd king. You see, all these 3 shepherds we've looked at are foreshadowing examples of Jesus. And the idea of the shepherd flows into the New Testament as we see Jesus variously referred to as the good shepherd, the great shepherd, and the chief shepherd. John 10 says the good shepherd gives his life for the sheep, referring to Jesus. Maybe the term good is a bit out of favour right now. It seems slightly odd and old-fashioned to say he is a good man. But Jesus was the ultimate in good, the goodest good. And what does the good shepherd do? He goes around doing good things. He sees the multitude and has compassion on them. He heals sickness and weeps over people's sins. The good shepherd even bleeds for his own sheep. Jesus gives himself up for the sake of the whole flock, for all, gives his life as a ransom for many. So good that he could say, "I have lost none." Then he's known as the Great Shepherd. Hebrews 13:20 says, "Now may the God of peace, who through the blood of the eternal covenant brought back from the dead our Lord Jesus, that great shepherd of the sheep." You see, he's not the great shepherd when he dies. He's the good shepherd. He's the great shepherd when he's brought again from the dead. It's like in resurrection we perceive his greatness. When he lies in the grave, he's the good shepherd, having laid down his life for his sheep. But life appears again in him. The stone is rolled away and he stands out, the risen one. No more the dying. Now he is the great shepherd. Walking on earth among us, he was the good shepherd. Now he is and will remain the great shepherd. You see, the good shepherd offers us life in abundance. The great shepherd offers to make us perfect in every good work in order to do his will. And then to close, we see the chief shepherd. 1 Peter 5:4. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the crown of glory that will never fade away. We move from the good shepherd walking the earth, great shepherd after the resurrection, to chief shepherd at the second coming. It feels like this gathering force, good in dying, great in rising, chief in ruling the world. It's really illuminating to study this idea of shepherd, but what does this practically mean for us? Really quickly, two things. Firstly, the shepherd provides care, most especially care to those who are poor, needy, weary, troubled lambs or sheep of the flock. Isaiah 40 says he shall feed his flock like a sheep. He shall gather the lambs with his arms and carry them in his bosom, and shall gently lead those that are with young. See, lambs don't have the value of mature sheep, yet they're the most thought of under the great shepherd. They might fetch the least price in the market, but they have the greatest portion of his heart. If you feel poor and needy right now, Jesus wants to take care of you. Amazing. Secondly, the shepherd heads out to seek and save that which is lost. Jesus talks about how happy he is to leave the 99 and go to look for the one that's lost. And when he finds the one, he will throw him or her on his shoulders and bring them home. He takes care of those in need, and he seeks out the lost. When we put all this together, we begin to glimpse the importance of the Old Testament shepherds, pointing towards the good, great, and chief shepherd. And then to close, can I just encourage you to reflect on what Jesus, our shepherd, went through for us, to accept the gift of being brought home by him. And let me encourage you to live the life of a shepherd, working hard for those in need, holding out a helping and healing hand to the poor and lonely, and ultimately pointing the flock towards our very own shepherd. Hey, this morning's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour regarding shepherds. There's so much more we could talk about, and I hope it just gives you a flavour to maybe delve into this a little bit more yourself. In the meantime, it's been great to have you with us. May you have a supremely blessed week. We look forward to seeing you in the building or back online next week. Take care. God bless.